Hello and a very good morning to all of you out there. Welcome to the first session of the KED Education at Home program on Pentaksiran Bilik Darjah or Classroom Assessment for Primary School. I am Chong Lynn from SJKC Keat Hwa H, Alosta. So before I proceed with my session today, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Sektor Pembelajaran JPN Kedah for the opportunity to share some insights about classroom assessment, and to SSTP Kedah for airing this session live on YouTube. So today, I will share with you about assessing writing skills in a lower primary classroom. Hopefully, this session will benefit you in one way or another. So we will be looking at English Year 2 today, focusing on writing skills. So I will be referring to Supervised Student Book, Unit 8, My Robot, page 101. I will be also drawing references from Supervised Teacher's Book, the DSKP, the Scheme of Work for Year 2, and also the PBD Implementation Guidebook, 2nd edition 2019. So this is lesson number 108. So if you are referring to the SOW for Sekolah Kebangsaan, and lesson number 60 if you are referring to SOW for SJK. So before I proceed with the lesson, let us look at these three methods of assessment. So based on the PBD Implementation Guidebook, 2nd edition 2019, there are three methods of assessment which a teacher can employ when carrying out classroom assessment. So the first method is oral. We could assess pupils orally when they interact with the teacher, when they interact with their peers, or even when they interact with the stimulus given. So some examples of oral assessment are a question and answer session, reading aloud session, storytelling, and also singing. Okay, the second method of assessment is written assessment. So written work, essay writing, or even projects are considered as written assessment. And finally, we have the observation method. So we as teachers do a lot of observations when pupils are learning or when they are completing their tasks. So regardless of which methods you use, it is important that we have a way to record their progress. Okay, it can be in the form of a checklist, an anecdote, photos, videos, or even a running record. So for more information on the methods of assessment, you may refer to the PBD Implementation Guidebook, 2nd edition, page 44 to 46. So for today's session, I will first explain to you how I would carry out my lesson, or rather how I carried out this lesson with my pupils last year. So like any other teacher, before lesson, I would first plan the flow of the lesson. Okay, so based on the curriculum documents that we have, which are the DSKP, the Scheme of Work, and the Supervised Teacher's Book, I will plan the flow of my lesson. So apart from planning for the lesson, I would also plan how I assess my pupils throughout the lesson. So today I will be using two methods of assessment, which are observation and the pupils' written work. So at the end of this session, I will show you how I would normally record my pupils' progress before reporting their level of performance in the PBD template pelaporan PBD. So to start off the lesson, this is the scheme of work for lesson 108 for SK and lesson 60 for SJK. So let's look at the content and learning standards. The content standards and learning standards are directly lifted from the scheme of work. So, the main content standard for today's lesson is 4.2, communicate basic information intelligibly for a range of purposes in print and digital media. And the complementary content standard is 4.3, communicate with appropriate language form and style for a range of purposes in print and digital media. Subsequently, the main learning standard for this lesson is 4.2.5, connect words and phrases using basic coordinating conjunctions. And the complementary learning standard is 4.3.1, use capital letters and full stops appropriately in guided writing at sentence level. So these content standards and learning standards can also be referred to as our curriculum aspiration, the aspirational targets that we aim to achieve, target that we hope all our pupils could achieve. So now let's look at the learning objectives. From the main and complementary learning standards, the learning objectives are derived. So the learning objectives for today's lesson are, by the end of the lesson, pupils will be able to write at least one sentence with the conjunction and or but. They should also be able to write at least 3 sentences by starting them with capital letters and end them with full stops. So after setting the learning objectives, I would plan the flow of the lesson, as well as how and when classroom assessment will take place. So since we are really focusing on classroom assessment today, I will lead you directly into the lesson delivery section. For the pre-lesson, you may choose to revise the vocabulary for body parts with your pupils or other activities you deem fit. So let's go to activity 1. Pupils will have to read these 4 short paragraphs, look at the pictures carefully, and match them. As this reading activity leads up to the writing activity later part of the lesson, I would draw my pupils' attention to the use of punctuations and conjunctions in these paragraphs. I would also draw their attention to the use of the plural s. Okay, for example, we have here legs, 5 legs, and 8 arms. Okay. Alright, so in this part of the lesson, there isn't any form of assessment as we are really focusing on the 2 writing learning standards. However, teachers will still have to observe, monitor, and guide pupils to make sure that pupils follow through this activity well. Now, let's look at the main activity. So based on the student's book, this is the ultimate product that pupils have to produce. So this product is what we assess as their written work. So it is always good to have a model for pupils to look at as they would understand the task better. So here I would again reiterate the task for the day to my pupils, drawing their attention to the picture and the text. I will also use these guiding questions to ask pupils so that they have a rough idea of what they need to write later. So the guiding questions are, what's the name of this animal? What has it got? What color is it? And what can it do? So in my next step, I would ask my pupils to close their eyes and imagine their own funny animal, as you can see from this picture here. So as they close their eyes, I will ask them guiding questions such as, can you imagine your funny animal? Has it got an arm? 2 arms? Has it got a long stretchy arm? Has it got a head or 2 heads? And the teacher will continue with other parts of the body. It is always a joy to see their expressions during this activity because children are full of imaginations. They will nod or shake their heads, showing that they understand the teacher. So after that, the teacher would ask them to slowly open their eyes and elicit some information about the animal in their imagination. Again, there isn't any form of assessment here. However, these activities are vital in the sense that they lead up to the writing activity the pupils need to produce later. So whether or not the pupils can successfully achieve the learning objectives for that day depends very much on these lead-up activities. So when the pupils are ready, they can start drawing their animals and color them as creatively as they possibly can. So when they are done with the coloring, they can start crafting their written work. So as the pupils are writing, the teacher can go around the classroom to observe, and provide necessary support and guidance to weaker pupils to write. So moving around, observing them, facilitating them is part of the assessment. So as we go around the class, we check whether they can construct sentences using and or but. We check whether they punctuate correctly, prompting them whenever necessary, guiding the weaker pupils with some support. With good pupils, we can ask them questions to stimulate their thinking so that they can write more creatively, achieving better quality of work. So now, let's look at this. So the drawing that the pupils created and their write-up are written evidences. This is where the second method of assessment comes in. When you assess written work, most of the time, you take their work home and to mark and to check. This is when I check whether my pupils have achieved the learning objectives. So, to those who finish their work earlier than others, I would give out this checklist to them so they could self-assess their work by going through each item in the checklist. So these items consist of all sentences begin with capital letters, all sentences end with full stops, there are spaces between words, the best handwriting was used, I understand what I read, and I use and or but to join my sentences. So pupils will draw a smiley face for a job well done and a straight face if they think they have more work to do. So after which they will exchange their work with their peers. And again, their peers will be drawing a smiley face or a straight one. So on top of that, their friends will also evaluate their work by coloring the number of stars at the bottom. More stars means better work. So besides being a form of assessment, a checklist can actually cultivate the habit of editing and checking their own work before submitting it to the teachers. So making self-assessment as a common practice in the classroom not only encourages pupils to be involved in, but also encourages them to take more responsibility and ownership in their own work. So peer assessment, on the other hand, provide opportunities for pupils to interact and communicate with their peers and be active learners in the classroom. So if you want to know more about other examples of instruments for classroom assessment, you may always refer to the PBD Guidebook, 2nd edition, page 73 to 87. So now that we have collected their written work, together with the observations we have done during the lesson, we will now evaluate our pupils' progress based on the Performance Standard Guide for Writing Skills, which is taken from the DSKP for Year 2 English. Do note that there are also Performance Standards Guide for listening skills, speaking skills, and reading skills. Now, let's look at some of the work my pupils have produced. So here, I will try to assess their work against the Performance Standard Guide for Writing, which I've taken from the DSKP. So the descriptors for writing skills for Performance Level 3 or PL3 are: the pupils can write simple sentences by using appropriate language, form, and style with support from the teacher. They can also organize basic information using correct punctuations and spelling with support from the teacher. So, and for PL4, the descriptors are: pupils can write simple sentences by using appropriate language, form, and style with minimal support from the teacher. And they can also organize basic information using correct punctuation and spelling with minimal support from the teacher. So the main difference here is in the amount of support given by the teacher. So PL3 is with support from teacher, whereas PL4 is with minimal support from the teacher. So this is pupil A. As you can see, there are some punctuation mistakes here and misuses of conjunction and. However, the sentence patterns are still there. So the full stops are correctly placed and we could understand what he or she is writing. So let's go to another piece of work before I give some comments. So this is pupil B. The C here, the name Kako, is not capitalized. So there's an omission of the conjunction and also missing of subject and verb in this sentence. So as we can see, both pupil A and pupil B are between the range of LP3 and LP4. They are not the weakest pupils in my class. However, during the lesson, I did not have enough time to go to them. So bearing in mind that they completed this task totally on their own with very minimal support from the teacher, I would probably award them with a LP4. Okay, and I would provide written feedback and also oral feedback. I will ask them in class to come to the front and I will explain it to them so that they could improve their work further. So this is pupil C. Let's have a look. So I'm Mark. I've got 1 head, 7 legs, and 10 arms. I'm green and I can dance. So what do you think about his or her work? As we can see, there isn't any mistake in this work, although the vocabulary that he or she uses is rather simple. So this is the work of one of my weakest pupils in class. So during that particular lesson, of course, I took extra care about him or her. Therefore, I was able to provide continuous guidance to him or her. So due to the fact that he was quite heavily guided throughout the activity, I would most probably give him a 3. Okay, now this is pupil D. So before we look into his work, let's compare the descriptors for PL5 and PL6. So let's look at PL5. So the pupil can write simple sentences by using appropriate language form and style confidently. Organize basic information using correct punctuation and spelling confidently. Whereas for PL6, the pupil can write simple sentences by using appropriate language form and style independently. Organize basic information and using correct punctuation and spelling independently. And what is the main difference between the two besides confidently and independently is this one. Display exemplary model of language use to others. Okay, so let's look at his work. Okay, again, there is hardly any mistakes in his work. So he has constructed a sentence with the conjunction and another with the conjunction but. Okay, he had picked up this sentence pattern from the previous activity and come up with his own. However, he did not directly copy this sentence. I can swim, but I can't jump. Okay, he altered a bit. So I would think that he deserves a 5 because I don't think he displayed an exemplary model of language use to others. Okay, so this is pupil E. So he could express his very own idea in written form with one very minor mistakes here. So what he does here, he says, I can carry 10 cars and swim in lakes or ponds only. So it means that he has that idea and he could transfer that idea into language, right? So his language use had probably exceeded the expectations of an A1 low. So with this, I would probably give him a 6. All right, let's look at this piece of work. This is pupil F. Okay, so I'm an insanometer. I've got uncountable eyes, uncountable heads, and uncountable teeth. I'm red, yellow, and blue. I can solve hard problems, and my teeth can excrete venom. So we could see here that this pupil has excellent use of the language. He could write independently with hardly any mistakes. So his language has exceeded the expectation of an A1 low. He used words like uncountable, solve hard problems, excrete venom. Coming from an 8-year-old, I think this piece of work is a 6. It's a solid 6, I would say. So it is important that we understand that the decision we made about our learners' progress and the level of performance is based on the teacher's professional judgment. So based on the PBD implementation guidebook, second edition, there are 4 elements that need to be taken into account when we make judgment. So based on the teacher's subject knowledge, which includes the knowledge that we have about the curriculum, the assessment methods, and the strategies we use in class, together with the pupils' input, our own experience, and our professional responsibility, which is the ethics of being a teacher, we make our judgment about our pupils' level of performance professionally and ethically. So, after the lesson, the teacher would record the pupil's progress based on the learning standards for that particular lesson. So, the recording of the pupil's progress can be done in any form that you like. Okay, you may use a class name list or a table or a spreadsheet. So, this is to ensure that the performance level that you give to your pupils is valid and justified. So this is the spreadsheet that I feel comfortable using. So there are 6 levels of performances, 6 levels of performance under each learning standard. So for example, in this lesson, I assess the learning standard 4.2.5 and 4.3.1. So I would either tick or write dates on it. So you might use different symbols for different meaning. Okay, so this is, 3 and a 3. Okay, besides progress record for writing skills, I've also prepared a progress record for my listening skills, speaking skills, as well as reading skills. So, twice a year, which is in June and in October, the teachers are required to do the reporting of the performance level of our pupils in the template pelaporan PBD provided by the Curriculum Development Division, BPK, in the form of Microsoft Excel. So as we can see, we are required to report the performance level based on the 4 skills, namely listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So the progress record or the evidences that we have collected throughout the semester help us to determine and justify the overall performance level for that particular skill. So let's look at the sample I've provided here. So let us assume that this progress record is for the first half of the year, and in June we have to fill in this template laporan. So based on my record, pupil A, the highest achievement for 4.2.1 is a 3. Highest for 4.2.2 is a 4, a 5 for 4.2.3, and so on. Okay, so we need to fill in the overall performance level for writing skill. So how we do this? We don't just take the average score of this level of performance, okay? We need to refer to the performance standard guides for writing skills in the SKP. And by using our own professional judgment, we then determine the overall performance level for writing skill for that particular pupil. Okay, so that is the whole cycle of classroom assessment that a teacher needs to carry out. Okay, before I complete this session, now that we conduct lessons from home, I would like to give some suggestion on some online and offline activities for a writing lesson during this PDPR. So if you conduct your lesson online, the simplest way to assess a pupil's writing skill is by asking them to respond in the chat box. You have chat box in Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. You can always ask your students to type in there. So it is simple, interactive, and very effective. So Google Docs is another application that pupils can use to write sentences or even paragraphs and essays for upper primary school students. So teachers could even provide rubrics for pupils' reference and subsequently give marks when they mark their work online. In this sample work, my Year 2 pupil has constructed some sentences based on the picture given. The words in green here is what I've suggested to him because there was some slight mistake in the sentence. So in my next slide, I will elaborate more on PBD and WhatsApp. So this is a Google Slide add-on that I use a lot when teaching online. It's called PBD. We prepare the slides on Google Slide, and by clicking on the PBD add-on, the slides become interactive. Okay, there are so many other applications that provide the same function. Okay, this application helps teachers to engage pupils during live instruction. So as teachers, we could see our pupils' answer in real time and provide feedback almost immediately. So besides giving real-time corrective feedback, most of these applications too provide post-session takeaways which teachers can use as evidence of assessment. So in many circumstances, however, not all pupils are fortunate to have the device or the facilities to learn online. There are many alternatives that a teacher can choose. So these are some samples of my pupils' work where they send their work to me through WhatsApp. So after checking and marking, I will send it back to them. Using WhatsApp or Telegram might just be as effective as any other sophisticated applications out there. So as teachers, We tried the best we can, providing lots of support and alternatives for pupils and parents to learn in their own pace, time, and circumstances. So that's all I would like to share with you today. I hope this session has benefited you in some ways. I wish you all the best in your teaching and may we all continue to grow to be a better teacher. With that, stay safe and take care. Goodbye. Para penuntun yang dikasihi, sila isikan maklum balas program di pautan yang tertera.